And welcome to the BAC Podcast, the Bible, Apostolics, and Current Events. Brian Sexton, as always. Now, unless he goes on vacation or we get a guest fill-in for him, Pastor Aaron Fairburn. How you doing this morning, Pastor?
I'm doing good. How about you, brother?
A lot to talk about today. A lot of things going on in our world as we record this. We're actually recording this on Friday, September 12th. You'll see it on Monday, September 15th, but we're recording this on Friday morning, September the 12th, and lots to talk about. But, again, it's a good day. We're breathing air. The Lord's given us this opportunity to get together and talk to everybody, and so we're thankful for that. A couple things I wanted to hit on with you today, and I would say, how's your week been? And we catch everybody up, but man, there is just so much going on in our world today. There's so much happening. Even as we record this, there is news breaking all around us, and so we will start with, let's go here first. 24 years ago yesterday, September 11, 2001, the anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. I want to get a perspective from you of where you were at 24 years ago and kind of get a perspective of your day. And we'll kind of compare notes here because I've got some very distinctive memories of that day as well, too.
Absolutely. I'll never forget where I was at. I don't just remember the place. I remember the room. I remember everything about it. I was with my friend. We were doing a construction job, remodeling a room addition. Actually, we built the room addition. So we wasn't remodeling. We were building it for the first time. But it was a trailer that was way out in the woods. And the way this guy had set it up, just a neat thing. So I'm doing drywall, and all of a sudden across the radio, they come and said, "Hey, the World Trade Center's been hit by an airplane." And
sorry about that, folks. I had to reach up and turn his microphone up a little bit.
And so when we heard that, we were shocked, but no big deal at first. It's not the first time.
Yeah.
And but we was like, wow, can you believe it? But when the second one hit, we knew. And I can remember the shock. We finished out the day working, but just talking about like, what in the world, what's happening? But when the towers fell, that was when it really took such a negative turn. Really, I think the echoes of that happen around the world in the way that our military responded. But even for Americans, we all felt the shock of the sadness of that day. So, yeah, I remember it distinctly. And it was a tragic event that truthfully brought us to this weird place we are today. Our country now has been into so many conflicts in the Middle East over it. It got us planted square in the Middle East. There would have been no Benghazi. There would have been no Iraq. There would have, the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Just so many conflicts that started from that. I think not Hamas. What's the terrorist group that Trump come in and pretty much eradicated? That's began to kind of build up again. Do you remember
the Taliban?
No. The ones that was going killing all the Christians, cutting their heads off all across the whole Middle East there. Anyways, Trump had come in and kind of eradicated them, and but all that stemmed from 9/11.
Yeah. Well, and 9/11 that day, it was a Tuesday morning. Okay, you don't expect anything to happen on Tuesday morning. It's the middle of the week. Things like that. I was heading back with my dad from Louisville, Kentucky. We went to the National Quartet Convention. We stopped at a Cracker Barrel, right, I think maybe Shelbyville, Kentucky. And between Louisville and Lexington, we stopped at Cracker Barrel, and his boss actually called him and told him what was going on. Then my wife got a hold of me, and she was very fearful. She was working at the bank in Milton, and our son was just about to turn a year old. Just about to turn a year old. My mom was watching him that day, and she was just hysterical. You've got to get to Bryce. You've got to get to Bryce. And I'll never forget the chaos of the day. Just the sheer not knowing what was going on. I had a cousin that was flying up here to meet my Uncle Kenny and my dad, and they were going to go on a little golf trip. They were trying to get up here. Their plane was grounded. They ended up renting a car and driving up here. But ironically, I had a sleep study planned for that night because I had severe sleep apnea. And my wife said, "Are you going to go through with it?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got to get something done. I'm falling asleep at the wheel, and I was quitting breathing in the middle of the night, and so yeah, but chaotic. And this was a time, Pastor, before social media. This was a time before, you depended on radio and news, television news, to get it. Unlike the situation we're going to talk about here in a little bit with Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, where that news was instantaneous. I mean, the reports were just coming from everywhere. And I imagine what that event would have been like through the lens of social media.
9/11 was,
yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, with 9/11, we had some beginnings. We didn't really have social media like we know it today. We had the beginnings of the internet was out, and so pictures got out, and but we didn't have the I don't think YouTube was a thing yet. I don't think Facebook was a thing yet. We may have had MySpace, but I don't know if even MySpace had come out at that point.
Well, think about it this way. Could you imagine?
We had no iPhone.
No, you had the flip phone. So could you imagine? Text messaging was still in its relative infancy, but could you imagine social media with 9/11 today? And people thinking, okay, I'm on the 91st floor of the Trade Center. There would be Facebook videos. People, hey, I'm Facebook Living, and I'm heading down the steps of the World Trade Center, or somebody, trying to get a video message to their loved one, something like that. I mean, it would just be unreal today.
We got most of that through the news. Today we won't even. A lot of people don't even trust the news to get so. But I remember 3 events in my life that I felt. I'm talking about national events that I felt a national sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And those events were 9/11.
Yep.
But before 9/11, there was one when we were kids, and I'm almost certain that you would have been in your classroom watching the event, and they actually dismissed us from school. But do you remember when the space rocket exploded?
We were out of school that day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. We got Martin Luther King. I think we were out for Martin Luther King Day because it was in January.
Yeah,
talking about the Challenger explosion.
Yeah. I was in the
8th grade.
Really? Man, are you that much older than me?
I was in the 8th grade.
I was in the 5th grade.
That was 1986, so you would have had to have been a very slow developing young man.
Was that 86?
Yeah, so you would have had to have been in 7th grade. You're a year younger than I.
I can tell you where I was at Emmons Elementary School, and I could remember the classroom I was in, and I remember watching it, and so I don't know why we were in school maybe we went to school, Martha. I have no idea, but I remember watching. They pulled one of them, the TVs they put on the carts. They pull them.
Yep.
And I remember they had closed school early and sent us home, and so there was a feeling of even as a kid I could feel it.
Yeah, I was at the Cabell County Library when I found out, and somebody that I knew, one of my classmates happened to be over there as well too, and came and said that the space shuttle had exploded.
Wow.
And yeah, it again, seminal moments, and you and I were talking about this before we started recording, so it's a good time to bring it back up. We did not have some of the seminal moments that our parents did growing up. You have to think, okay, your dad's 75, 76. Okay. My dad would have been 72 had he lived. So the first thing for them was the Kennedy assassination in 1963. My dad said he was scared to death, 10 years old, thought the world was going to end. And then 1968, you have Martin Luther King's assassination, April the 4th, 1968. And then Bobby Kennedy's 2 months later, June of 1968 in Los Angeles.
You had the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was
1961, yeah.
That was an incredible.
You had the riots of the Democratic National Convention. 68 was such a turbulent year because you had King's assassination, you had Bobby Kennedy's assassination, and then you had the Chicago riots around the Democratic National Convention in 68.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of turmoil, but I would argue that today that we are in a place where we have a lot of, now not those big events, but we have the same feeling of social unrest, and we have the same feeling that everything is. I wouldn't say that America's at a boiling point, but I would say that we're at a simmer, and but because we are in the midst of a culture war, which is what was happening then when they were rioting. There was a culture war. We're in the middle of a culture war that has divided us so much that if I was a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not, I think the things just so happen to be random and they just happen.
Yep.
When actually, I think the Prince of the Air. I think Satan's probably behind all of it. But
well, you think about it here. I love what you said about the culture war. Okay. I thought of Ecclesiastes 11. There's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. I think that's cast your bread upon the water. Sorry about that. But Ecclesiastes, somewhere in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. You got to think back then too, Pastor. Facial hair was a sign of rebellion back in the 60s. Men wore mustaches and beards and goatees and things like that, because most men were clean shaven, clean cut, wore a suit and tie to work every day, and wore a suit and tie about everywhere. You would see people flying on airplanes wearing a suit and tie, men wearing suit and tie and things like that. And the counterculture was not that way. The counterculture, as they were called, just kind of did what they wanted to do. They just kind of did some of the things that they felt like they needed to do and things like that. And now we see that counterculture, but the counterculture has got TikTok, and they've got Twitter, and they've got Facebook, and they've got this social media app and that social media app. And back then, the counterculture were in pockets in the country. They were in San Francisco. They were in but San Francisco was the big place that they were at back then. And so now, but I love that point that you made about the 60s, where you had that counterculture that believed in free love, and there was a lot of free drug use and things like that.
It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. There's the same spirit behind it. It is, feminism fueled that. And feminism largely fuels I think this is like fourth wave feminism that's fueling a lot of what we experience today. You get a movement and they win and they don't have an enemy anymore, they'll make them up. So that, eventually, there's such a pushback against all the culture from it because, like I say, they want to keep their structure. They want to keep their thing together. They have power through that. They don't want to give that power up, so they'll find new enemies.
Well, you always have to have a cause.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have a cause, what's the point? If you don't have a reason to do something, what's the point? And, I tell my family and I tell people all the time, if your why isn't clear, your what doesn't matter. And to your point, if it wasn't Vietnam for that generation in the 60s, well, it was Vietnam. and then it was the draft. And to your point, it was feminism. You had women burning bras and things like that. And it was you're right. When this cause died down and people weren't as receptive to it, we have to have something else to keep the troops rallied and things like that.
Well, like I said, it's never enough. And it just fuels it. And that's brought us to where we are today. The deep divide is a result of what I would consider to be what they call maybe fourth wave feminism, which is what brings us BLM. And in large part, fourth wave feminism has really the one that gave life and power to transgender, which is such an awkward thought that it is feminism that's actually being the enemy of they're going to destroy their own at this point. And but what it is they need that power and they don't want to give it up. But
well, can I jump in here for a second, because you've really hit on something very, very interesting, the spirit of feminism. And you're absolutely correct on this. Do you notice that there are lots more men trying to transition to becoming women than there are women transitioning to become men?
It seems that way. I mean,
and so to your point about the spirit of feminism, my goodness, that was such a great point that you made there. It's that same spirit coming back around. We thought that spirit died in 1970 or 1971, but here it comes back 50 plus years later. Yeah. And it's like it's got second wind, so to speak. Yeah. It's stronger than ever.
Well, first wave feminism, it's still the same thing. You hear it today. In first wave feminism, you didn't hear it said bluntly. But you hear it said bluntly today. They're here to destroy the patriarchy. Well, the patriarchy is the hierarchy and structure that God set up.
Yes.
And so what they really are saying is, this is really a war where everyone's on that side has rallied around feminism and to attack traditional Christian values. And so you have a lot of churches that, not a lot, but you have some churches in America that have picked sides, and they decided, hey, we're on that side. And so the funny thing about those churches is they have no vision for the future, because when a church does that, they always go a certain route. It's like they fall into, eventually they come to say, because if you're going to side with that side, you have to also make other concessions to. So, and one of the concessions you always hear them go to is, well, there's many paths to God.
Yeah.
And so once they do that, they just made themselves irrelevant.
Right. Well, and here's the thing too. I was having a conversation with my wife one day. We were talking about somebody, and I said, they didn't make that baby by themselves. Mm-hmm. It still takes a man and woman to conceive a child.
What is a woman?
What is a well? That's exactly. But my point was our son will be 25 tomorrow. My wife couldn't conceive that child without me, and I couldn't father that child without her. And people are going to say, well, you can do donation, things like that. Okay. But the way God designed procreation was for man and woman to procreate together. But to your point, if it is a man believing that he can become a woman and having all the things that women do and have internally in their bodies, you're right, it's destroying the patriarch. And we already have an issue with a lot more single mothers than we've ever had before, or a woman says, hey, I don't want to be married to a man, but I want children. Yeah. And you're right. It's destroying the patriarchy.
There's a prophecy given. You'd have, was it 7 women that would approach a man? I think it's what it was, and say, look, we'll provide our own bread. In other words, we'll make our own living. We just want to be called by your name.
Right.
And, I think that might be speaking to something even deeper than the surface of what it is. And today they don't even want to be called by his name. It's like we could have a whole podcast. We could have a whole series of as a matter of fact, we could make the whole series on watching the fall of feminism, because I have heard some predictions that you will watch feminism begin to fall in about 2030. And the reason is it's gotten so crazy that they're going to destroy themselves. And when you see them openly made fun of online, which you're already starting to see, it's the beginning of the death of them. They've gotten so. But I want to go and talk to. I think it's what we.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to tell you about. So Wednesday night, I had a lesson planned, and it was a good lesson. And I was talking to my presbyter, and he said, he called me and he said, "Did you hear about Charlie Kirk?" And I said, "No. I mean, I heard he got shot, but, I assumed he lived." And he said, "No, he died." And when he told me that, I was just, man, I was unexpectedly, I felt so down immediately. It was just like when the other big events happened. It was like, wow, man. And it stunned me. I did not expect the reaction, but for about the last 10 years, I have watched Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
We've kind of watched him grow up through his, from a teen into his 20. Well, right as he became about 20 years old is when I started watching. And so we've kind of watched him for close to 10 years anyways. And he was such a good man. His whole thing was to bring traditional values back, traditional Christian values back into America, and conservative policies. He would go to universities and he would try to make the case for traditional values, traditional marriage. And he would try to make the case to not have an abortion, but he never put people down. He had a way of doing it. It was so respectful. He would listen to people. He would respectfully say, I respect your opinion, but this is what I would say. And, but he was so respectful, which is why it stuns everybody that he would be the guy. He was not the guy he was not the guy that was a rage baiter, if you know what I'm talking about. He wasn't the guy that would say inflammatory things just to poke at you. It was just really, he believed that if he could go and have an open debate with young people, that they would see it and it would change minds. And so it's so funny that this what it looks like to be this young man took his life. But anyways, when I heard it, I was so stunned, and I was encouraged by my presbyter. He said, "You may want to even address that tonight." And so at the very last minute, at about 10 or 15 minutes when he told me, and I altered the teaching to talk about, how Satan, being the god of this world, has spread lies and put lies in people's minds, and how those ideas that he has put in their minds spreads hate.
I'm gonna make a very unpopular statement, but I'm gonna say it in response to what you said. You have to look at the way Charlie Kirk did things. And to your point, Charlie Kirk went to college campuses. Yep. Okay. His impact on this last election with rallying the young vote was immense. Yep. It was immense. But here's what I will say, the difference between Charlie Kirk and other conservative voices that you have, and why his impact was so profound, but it also made him an easy target. You look at guys like Glenn Beck, you look at guys like Benny Johnson, you look at a lot of these conservative voices. I've just named two. I could name several of them. They all were on that same echelon with Charlie Kirk. The difference is you hardly ever saw Glenn Beck speak at something that wasn't a controlled setting.
Yeah.
You didn't see Benny Johnson speak at something that was not a controlled setting. These guys were much older. They could have done Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro has been more, but Ben Shapiro's a younger guy. My point is, Charlie Kirk made himself an easy target intentionally, to your point, because he wanted to be among the people. That's where you change hearts and minds, is in one-on-one dialogue. And that's what Charlie Kirk wanted. And a lot of these, Sean Hannity, all of his things are controlled. He has a controlled broadcast studio for his radio show. He has a controlled broadcast studio for his television show. Dan Bongino, controlled setting. All these guys have controlled settings. They have security around them. They don't take, they wouldn't do what Charlie Kirk did. And that's no criticism of them. It's just Charlie Kirk was so effective, to your point, because he chose to do things one-on-one, and he made himself that target that ultimately cost him his life.
I heard last night, I think it was, a short clip of Charlie Kirk, and it's so ironic. Someone asked him, when you're gone, what would Charlie Kirk like to be remembered as? And just without hardly any much hesitation, he said, I want to be remembered as someone who had the courage to stand up for his faith.
Yep.
And
but again, it's controlled environments. I mean, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit further too. You're exactly right. And again, let me parse my words by saying I'm not being critical of a lot of the conservative voices that you hear out there. I'm not being critical, nor am I being critical of some of the liberal voices that you hear as well. But I know that world a little bit intimately, and it's very much a controlled setting. Glenn Beck will broadcast. He does a lot of broadcasts from his ranch in Idaho. You have no idea where Glenn Beck's ranch in Idaho is unless somebody leaked it. But Glenn Beck controls everything around him. Dan Bongino controlled everything around him. These guys don't, they inflame just as many people on the left as Charlie Kirk did. The reason they're still here today and Charlie Kirk is not is because they keep everything controlled. And Charlie Kirk had some measure of security. Yeah. But
I just don't think
it was an open setting in where he.
I just don't think Charlie Kirk ever thought. I mean, I know it had to cross his mind, but I just thought, I think he would have thought, there's so many people that's so much more inflammatory. I think what really comes down to it is that Charlie Kirk actually was more effective at swaying votes.
Yeah, very true.
Than any of the other guys. They all wanted to sway votes, but here's the difference. Dan Bongino had a show. Who tunes in? Conservatives.
Yeah.
Who watches Glenn Beck? Conservatives. What Charlie Kirk was doing was going out right in amongst where the liberals were and having conversations with, what some might call at least the enemy of that idea, not his enemy, but the enemy of the idea. But he wanted to change them with ideas. He wanted to have open dialogue and just convince them. He just wanted to show you, here's facts, here's what I believe. But, it's, what do you think? I have considered this. We were talking about what kind of change we might see. And, I know I don't know that we have two different opinions so much, but historically, these things actually create a wider divide, not unite, but not always.
Right.
So, I think we were talking about how, you believe it's going to do the opposite. And I'm so hopeful because I felt like, when I first thought, I felt the same way, man, this is going to cause everybody to realize they have gone too far in the rhetoric. The left, I hate to even classify as the left, but whatever this ideology is, it's so radical because they feel like that the end justifies the means no matter what, because they feel like they're fighting for justice. They're not, but they believe it. And because they believe it, anything is justified in their eyes. I have heard comments. Now, I didn't read them. this is more or less most of the information that I have gotten about what happened was from other people calling me, because I don't really get on social media. What I have seen, I went to YouTube and looked up because I was curious about it. But, I still haven't watched the video of him getting assassinated, and I won't. That stuff upsets me.
I have.
It upsets me. I don't like to see it, see that kind of stuff. But the truth is about the whole matter is we're so divided right now. And our nation, listen, we have had, they tried to assassinate Trump more than once, right? One shot, but they've arrested other people that they thought were trying to.
Yep.
And now we got Charlie Kirk. We've had a lawfare, they call it. We've had judges that's went off. We are in a culture war that is real, and these things are heating it up. How many deaths do you know off the top? You know a lot of facts like this. How many deaths does it take? Is it per day or per week to consider something to be a hot war? It's like 6 deaths or in a week, or what is that?
Yeah, something to that effect. But I don't want to lose this thought that I have too. This is what I believe in this situation. Okay. I believe in measured response.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I've seen that disturbs me in the past couple of days is you have so many people, so many conservative voices that have said, you have woken up millions of Charlie Kirks and things like that. You better know what you're getting into before you make a statement like that. Because so many would say, well, I'm going to rise up and do this, and I'm going to rise up and do that. And I'm going to talk to the camera a minute. You better know when you stand for anything that it's going to cost you something.
The Bible says count the cost.
Count the cost. Exactly right.
They need to count it in that too, no matter.
Well, and Pastor, here's the point I want to finish is have a measured response. Too many times we respond in emotion. Too many times the emotions are raw and we just respond. That's why social media can be so dangerous at times, because something happens to somebody and they go, well, I've got to rant or I've got to get this. No, you don't. You don't have to rant. Yeah. If somebody cuts you off in traffic, you don't have to get on Facebook and rant about it. If something wrong happens to you, you don't have to get on Facebook and rant about it.
If your family does something, you don't
exactly. Have to But we've not learned as a society to have our parents and grandparents, that generation had measured responses. They would say to themselves, I don't like this. They may have been privately angry, but publicly, you had no idea how they were going to respond and react. Well, and we've got to get back to that.
I know this may be a little bit controversial, but I believe, this is Aaron Fairburn's opinion right here. I believe that when people get upset in the way that they have over things like this, and I'm not talking about Charlie Kirk's death, I'm talking about what made the shooter get so worked up.
Right.
When we go to Facebook and we start assassinating someone verbally.
Yeah.
Character assassination. When we go, what we're doing a lot of times, we're trying to get as many people to side with us, and we're trying to destroy their character, and we're trying to garner support for our side, and in the end, that is a very feminine energy. That is, it is not what men do, and it always. I'm always shocked that our societies went wacko. I'm always shocked when family gets on and puts out their family disputes.
Yes.
It makes the whole family look bad. The people that think they're going to do that, and they get on there and they'll rant about their dad, their mom, or you'll have dads or moms rant about their kids now, or a brother and sister is at dispute, and they'll get on Facebook and they blast the world. It is a shameful thing that you would try to destroy your family's reputation.
Correct.
Because when you do it, you're bringing yourself down with them. But that's the problem, is a lot of people's got, I'll burn this ship down with me and everybody else on if I don't get my own.
Well, and You're exactly right. And let me go back to the measured response for just a minute.
Yeah.
And the thought just came to my mind. Okay. December 7th, 1941, 84 years ago coming up, 84 years ago. So we are a generation and a half, basically, or 2 generations removed from that event. The day President Roosevelt said, a day that will live in infamy. Okay. You look at 1941, you look at that time frame, World War II and Korea. The U.S. government did not have to institute a draft. You know why? Because people said, it's my duty to sign up to go fight for the United States of America. Our country was attacked. It's my patriotic duty to go sign up and go fight to defend our country. You even had Major League Baseball players. I'm going to bring one, and I'm going somewhere, so just stay with me a minute. Ted Williams, probably the greatest hitter of all time. Ted Williams forfeited 2 major league seasons in the prime of his career to go fight bomber planes in World War II. His vision was that good that he flew bomber planes in World War II. Vietnam was a whole different story. That's why they had to have the draft, because people did not want to sign up to go to that war. They did not feel like it was our responsibility to be there. Desert Storm the same way. It wasn't until 9/11 that you had that comeback, so to speak, for the military, that they had a lot of people signing up to join. Pat Tillman, who was a free safety for the Arizona Cardinals, gave up his professional football career to go fight and ultimately was killed in Afghanistan. Pat Tillman could have been a Hall of Fame safety for the Arizona Cardinals. The point is, Pastor, whenever we have measured responses, we have rational thought that prevails. And in the emotion of Charlie Kirk's assassination, what I would implore to conservative voices, what I would implore to conservatives who sided with Charlie Kirk, people who agreed with Charlie Kirk, 2 guys like us who agreed with Charlie Kirk, have a measured response. Yeah. Because when you say you've risen up millions of Charlie Kirks,
that's rhetoric.
It's emotional rhetoric. That's exactly right. It's emotional rhetoric, because here's the thing. I believe Charlie Kirk, from the time he was 18 years old, knew exactly what he wanted to do. Everything Charlie Kirk did was strategically measured. And that's why Charlie Kirk was so effective, was because he had a plan. That's why Ben Shapiro has been effective. You have to be strategic. Why was Rush Limbaugh so effective? My goodness, Rush Limbaugh is the GOAT as far as a conservative voice is concerned. There will never be another Rush Limbaugh, but Rush Limbaugh, everything Rush Limbaugh said out of his mouth was measured. It's why he was so brilliant, because everything he said was so dynamically, I would say, perfect. As a broadcaster, as a talk show host, Rush Limbaugh was there'll never be another one like him, because everything he said was measured.
Well, he's really the one that started the conservative radio movement in the way that we know it today.
And I can tell you this from doing talk radio. Okay, I'll just lend a first-person perspective of doing talk radio. A couple things that I'll share on this podcast. Number one, things begin to change with talk radio. I can remember in the last 10 years or so that I did talk radio here in Huntington, the station that I did it on. They had security. You had to be buzzed in the building. Then they had to let you back to the studios. Yeah. So if something was going to go down, you were in a protected. I felt very safe doing that show. The second thing I will say is I have had moments on the air where I've had things hit me and it just came out. I wasn't as measured as I should have been. Now, and I just recently did a stint on talk radio, I was a lot more measured. And I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to have a platform of whatever it is, measure yourself. Think about everything that comes out of your mouth. Think about everything that you say. Because I've said for years, anything you say can and will be used against you. The Miranda rights that officers use when arresting someone. Measure yourself on social media. Measure yourself. Be thoughtful, because that's how you win the hearts and minds of people. Is you connect and you're thoughtful in your response. It's not just show up and throw up. And Charlie Kirk didn't do that.
No, he knew what he was doing. And, he also, he did know the risks. Ultimately, even though no one would have really expected this, he knew there was a risk for it. But he died really for what he believed. He will go down as a martyr. He'll go 100%. Down as not only a Christian martyr, but he'll go down as a political martyr, because what Charlie Kirk done so well is he done the thing that they tell us not to do. Don't mix religion and politics. Charlie Kirk said, I don't prescribe to that. I think that religion, at least the moral values of it, belong squarely in politics.
He's this generation's Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah, and let me tell you,
I believe.
Maybe, my son is, he'd come to me the other day and said, Dad, I don't understand it.
My son did too. My 25-year-old did too.
He said, how could somebody do that? Maybe you don't agree with what they're going to say, but why would you kill them over that? And, but here's the thing is, there are some people out here that are so, their emotions, and sometimes they're mentally disturbed. I told him, I said, here's what's going to happen, son. When they find this guy, it's going to be a white male. He's going to be between the ages of about 18 to 26 to 28. That's what, and I said, he's going to have had some issues, some mental illness issues in the past, there'll be something. And you'll find out in some way, shape, or form, he will have had political connections. If it was just he attended, something.
Yeah.
Because it's, the only reason I said that is because it seems like every time that's the MO of these guys.
Well, Charlie Kirk was the reason I make the correlation between him and Bobby Kennedy. You have to look at 1968. Bobby Kennedy was well on his way to the presidency when he was assassinated. Just because Bobby Kennedy was charismatic. Bobby Kennedy, Charlie Kirk to a lot of degrees was charismatic. Now, political ideology-wise, they were different, very different. But the correlations there's a lot of similarities. Bobby Kennedy was very popular. Bobby Kennedy was young. Bobby Kennedy had carried on a political legacy. People felt like his brother's presidential term was unfulfilled. People thought, well, if JFK had been in office, we wouldn't have gone to Vietnam. We wouldn't have had the presence. And Kennedy was saying, we're going to get out of Vietnam. We're not going to do that. He did, his final, Bobby Kennedy's final speech, he ended with the peace sign. And then it very famously did that. There's a lot of corollaries between Bobby Kennedy and Charlie Kirk. I thought it was very fitting that RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy's son, who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, said a lot about that. I would love to hear how he thought about his father and Charlie Kirk and the correlations there. But there are some striking similarities because people have said one day Charlie Kirk would have been the president of the United States. Yeah, similar to what Bobby Kennedy was on trajectory to.
I heard him say he wasn't interested. I think he was even given an opportunity to be in Donald Trump's cabinet and turned it down. He just didn't have political aspirations. I think his aspirations were more about cultural change from what he was doing. Of course, that could change.
Well, and again,
or could have.
Well, here's the thing too. By constitutional law, Charlie Kirk couldn't have even been eligible for the presidency for another 4 years. And who knows? Again, your ideas change, your thoughts change as time progresses. What Charlie Kirk's role could have been in the Trump cabinet would have been would have been it would have been very interesting to see. I think the interesting thing now is, what does Turning Point USA do? How do they continue to forward a mission? How do they get? Because here's what's going to happen in the next few days. You're going to see an influx of donations into Turning Point USA. Their donations are going to go through the roof. It just invariably happens that way. That I'm doing my hands like Trump. I just caught myself. You missed it. You didn't see that. But invariably what happens is, in situations like this, donations continue to go up. I would be curious to see how Turning Point USA responds. And maybe there will be a conservative voice that steps over to kind of take that mission and run with it.
Has to be a particular type of individual.
Yeah.
Because Turning Point USA was, like I said, it's really about integrating faith in politics. And when we say that, I mean, he didn't necessarily, even though he didn't hide the fact, he wasn't trying to push everybody, make everybody be a Christian in politics. What he was doing is, but he was pushing traditional moral values, marriage.
Yes.
Not, against abortion, certain hot button topics, but so there's a lot of individuals out there that could fit the bill, but they'll have to have a unique, for it to survive, they'll have to have a unique makeup of that. And, Charlie Kirk's taken a lot of heat over his stance supporting Israel. But I will say this. I think what I heard is on a couple of the bullets, it seems to be there was some transgender messaging on one of the bullets, and I forget what the other one, but, it's that seemed to be the reason. But, for you don't know if that was set up or what. Maybe there's a whole different agenda that young man had. How does the church respond to this? I heard somebody say, they ought to bring back public execution.
Right.
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that. I don't think that's against the Bible. I think that's biblical.
Well, Utah's governor has already declared we've got the death penalty.
But what happens is public execution as Christians, I don't think we're like trying to stay on one side or another. But what happens in a society is, if you don't have fear of the law, fear of reprisal, of breaking the law, then people do whatever. And they've been letting people loose. Another thing my son had come and mentioned, he said, "Dad, it's going crazy. He's like, did you see the young Ukrainian lady get stabbed on the bus?" And everybody
in Charlotte, 4 hours away from us.
And everybody sat there. Nobody moved to help her, to defend her.
Yep.
They all just got up and just walked off the bus.
Been arrested 14 times.
Yeah. And the man had, I will say this, the man was schizophrenic and believed that the woman was, in his head, reading his thoughts or talking to him or something. But the fact is that the family had tried to do something.
Yeah.
And I want to bring that point out. I know this is it's maybe going a little bit of a different direction. I don't intend that. I just want to state it. A lot of the problems that we have today is because they took away our ability for families to deal with mental illness in the family.
Yeah.
My brother was schizophrenic, and as the family, we knew the problems, we knew what help he needed, and the state will not give it to you. And even what you can do is it takes almost an act of Congress, even when you get it. So, we could have tremendously helped my brother if the state would have gave us power to do so, but they will not. So you have people who really should be, when I say locked, I don't mean locked up, but locked down. They should have, be restricted, because sometimes They are dangerous to other people, and sometimes they're dangerous to themselves.
Right.
And so, we need to have mechanisms in place to protect the public and protect the individuals that are sick. My heart bleeds for mental illness. Like I said, but my brother was schizophrenic. I understand a lot about that. So I wasn't immediately, I don't immediately hate on that man. The man is sick, and in his mind, he's completely delusional. But the fact is that judge that don't even a lawyer, I don't know how, apparently she got appointed through Kamala Harris some way.
Mm-hmm.
I heard someone say, and that judge looks like she's too young to be a judge. And she's let this guy out over and over.
Yep.
And so our law, it's our system. We're breaking down. And here's the thing. The Bible says that God would reward a righteous nation with righteous leaders, righteous judges, and he will punish a wicked nation with wicked leaders and wicked judges. And what you see right now is very few righteous people in politics, and and you've got a group of them that are a large group that are very. I don't even think the people. When I say this, I don't think the people are wicked. I think that they're hijacked by a wicked ideology, and they think they're doing right, and they're not. They don't have any long-term vision to see what the end result of what they're pushing will be.
In the last days, they will call good evil, and evil good. I want to close this out, if you don't mind. I want to close this out today. Scripture came to my mind the other day from 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Verses 8 and 9, Bible says we are troubled on every side, but not distressed. We're perplexed. We're perplexed. There's a lot of people perplexed. Why would a young man in the prime of his life be taken out like that so viciously? Bible says we are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed, always bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our body. Saint of God, Christian, you might be perplexed today. You might be persecuted. You might feel forsaken. The Bible says, but we're not in despair. We're not cast down, and we are not destroyed. Fear not who has the power to destroy the body, but fear the one that can destroy both body and soul.
That's right.
And I would say this today, keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your eyes on him. Let not your heart be troubled. Jesus said in John 14:1, let not your heart be troubled. In my Father's house are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would have told you, but I go away to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also. Look up, church. It's not going to be long. Our redemption draws nigh. For Pastor Aaron Fairburn, Brian Sexton, hope you've enjoyed this. I'm glad we had this conversation. It's a introspective conversation. And
I want to
go ahead.
I'll say this. Remember, pray for the peace of Israel, and pray for the unity and the salvation of our nation.
Can't think of a better way to close it. For Pastor Aaron Fairburn, Brian Sexton, say, be blessed in Jesus' name.